Welcome to Participles and Chapter 14. We're going to be looking over pages 154 to 56 as we review a little bit about participles and also prepare for what we're going to be learning about participles in this chapter. Remember, I've said before that if you understand Greek participles, you understand Greek. So this is really important information. If we look at example 1, we see acusas de ho Jesus, etc. We have our normal participle, which is nominative masculine singular. We've seen these participles before. And we know then that it is connected to the subject of the sentence, Jesus. Now, Duff hasn't translated the de here. I would have translated this, and having heard, Jesus said to him, or and when Jesus heard, he said to him, something like that. But in any case, setting that aside for now, we recognize that we have a nominative masculine singular participle and a nominative singular masculine singular noun as the subject. The two of them go together. In a sense, the participle modifies ho Jesus. There's another sense when we translate it into English, we can translate it as a dependent clause that modifies the main verb. It's not a distinction that's probably particularly important, but one that if your mind works that way might be helpful to be aware of. When we translate it as a dependent clause, the noun that it is, that as Duff says, it modifies or that at least it agrees with in gender number case is the noun that becomes the subject of the participle in the dependent clause. It's not called a subject because participles don't technically have subjects, but when we translate it, that's the word that becomes the subject in English in the dependent clause. So having heard Jesus, Jesus is the noun that it agrees with. So if we create a dependent clause, we use Jesus as the subject, when Jesus heard. So in some senses, the participle works as an adjective, but in example 2, we have a very similar sentence, acusas de tauta ho Jesus. But now we see that a participle can also work in some ways as a noun. So we have tauta, which is the direct object of the participle. Participles can have direct objects, they can have prepositional phrases, they can have adverbs, they can have anything that a regular verb would have attached to it. Now, so far, we've only dealt with participles in the nominative, but this same thing can happen with other nouns in the sentence. So in example 3, we have kai edon alon angelon, and I saw another angel. Angel is in the accusative because it's the direct object of edon, but now we have two participles that are also in the accusative, anabainonta and echonta. Now, we haven't seen these endings for participles yet, but they may look familiar for your, as far as your third declension endings go. And so then we translate it, and I saw another angel ascending from the rising of the sun, having a seal from God. Ascending and having are both participles, but they modify angelon instead of modifying the subject of the sentence. And we know this because they are in the accusative, just like angelon is. In Mark 1:16, we have an example of both. Paragon, paraten, thalasan, aden, etc. Aden doesn't have an explicit subject. The subject is implied, but we have this paragon, which is nominative. And so we know that whoever's the subject of Adon is also connected to paragon. So we can translate it while he was passing along the sea, and it's the same subject as the subject of the main verb because paragon is in the nominative. Whereas if we continue reading, Simona kai Andrean amphibalontas ente thalase, the amphibalontas now is accusative plural, and it refers to both of the accusative singular proper names that are there. And we know then that this casting nets in the sea is what Simon and Andrew are doing. Um, this helps us in Greek to not make a mistake about where the participle is connected. In English, we have the problem of dangling participles. And so we can have participle phrases where we don't really know what they're connected to. So if I say the sentence, sitting on the park bench, the sun disappeared behind the clouds, it sounds like the sun is sitting on the park bench, which is clearly not what I mean. In order to be clear in English, I have to change the subject of the sentence so it agrees with, so it's the same um, uh, person or thing as the participle is referring to. So sitting on the park bench, I watched the sun disappearing behind the clouds. We can also have misplaced modifiers. So a participle that, because of where it's put in the sentence, is confusing. If I say covered in mustard, covered in mustard, I enjoyed the hot dog. Now, what I've basically said is that I'm covered in mustard while I'm enjoying the hot dog. And in order to say it correctly, and in order to be clear about who or what it is that's covered in mustard, I have to say, I have to move the participle so it's next to hot dog, covered in, or I enjoyed the hot dog covered in mustard. I think those are the only examples I have. Yeah. So in English, we can get confused either because the subject of the sentence is missing or it's the wrong subject for the participle I used, or simply because I put the participle too close to another noun that might get mixed up with the noun I actually meant to connect the participle to. But in Greek, we don't have that problem because Greek has cases. So if the participle is going to be referring to the subject, the participle is going to be in the nominative. If it's going to be referring to the direct object, it's going to be in the accusative. If the noun that it's referencing is in some other case, then the participle can take that case. And those are the kinds of things we're going to see in this chapter.